All right, I want to talk about a couple of different things in this video. I want to talk about what are called natural monopolies, and then I also want to talk about government regulation of monopolies. So I want to start off with what a natural monopoly is. Now, a natural monopoly is a situation where one company can produce the good at a lower average total cost, like one big company can produce the good at a lower average total cost than a bunch of smaller companies competing against each other. So the reason why this happens is because in some kind of markets, you have really big economies of scale. So remember, economies of scale is where the long run average total cost curve is decreasing as output increases. So this is our long run ATC, or just ATC. You can just call it the ATC curve. Okay. And so what happens is, like, you have a company who's operating way over here at what's called the minimum efficient scale. Remember, the minimum efficient scale, MES, okay, is the lowest possible output you can get to get your lowest long run average total cost, right? So this is the lowest quantity we can produce to get our lowest long run average total cost. So a company might be producing, like a really big company might be producing right here at MES, whereas a bunch of smaller companies might be producing way over here. So they'd be producing at this quantity and this quantity and this quantity, right? So as a result, this one single company that's really large, they can produce at a lower long run average total cost curve, or a lower long run average total cost. And so therefore, they can actually produce this good at a lower cost, and they can sell it at a lower cost and drive these other companies out of business. This is actually better for, this might actually be better for society as well, right? Because since this company can produce at a lower average total cost, they can sell the good at a lower price as well. So companies that operate this way, electricity companies would be a great example of this. So electricity operates under a natural monopoly. This is why your house doesn't have any other options for electricity other than the provider that runs the lines to the house. So electricity operates this way because, think about it, every single customer, you have to run a physical line to their house in order to serve them. And so a company is going to have to run a lot of lines to a bunch of different houses and then produce that electricity at a really big power plant. And when they do that, they can operate at lowest average total cost. Okay. And so as a result, electricity companies operate this way. All right. Now, the way that you can show a natural monopoly on a graph is this way. And this is important, what I'm about to point out to you. Okay. This is how we know when a company is operating as a natural monopoly. So a natural monopoly operates this way. Okay, so we have our demand curve, right? It's a monopoly, so we have a downward sloping demand curve, and we have marginal revenue, right? That hasn't changed. It's the same as every other monopoly we've looked at, okay? But the way this is different is this, all right? And what you'll notice is that this marginal cost curve is very elastic, right? It's very flat, okay? So this firm's going to produce where MR equals MC, right here at Q1, okay? And they're going to want a price right here at P1, right? Because they're going to use the price curve to determine what the prices are going to sell, okay? But the difference is how this looks, right? In a natural monopoly, because of those big economies of scale, what we'll see is an ATC curve that looks like this, all right? And here's how I know this is a natural monopoly. The reason why I know is because my average total cost curve crosses demand before it crosses marginal cost. So that's how you know when we're operating with a natural monopoly. ATC crosses demand before it crosses marginal cost. If that is true, we're operating with a natural monopoly. So this is a natural monopoly graph, right? Now this firm's making a profit, right? Because price is greater than ATC, okay? But the way we know it's a natural monopoly is ATC crosses demand before it crosses price, all right? Now, if this firm produces at MR equals MC, right, they're going to profit maximize, and in this case, they're going to make a profit, all right? Now, because the way the ATC curve works, all right, this firm, right, they're going to be happy to produce this good, and they're going to be making a profit for it, and they're going to drive other companies out of business because they can operate at a lower average total cost than other companies can. Okay, now that's a natural monopoly. We're going to come back to this in just a second, but what I want to talk about now is I want to change topics slightly and then kind of loop back around to natural monopolies in a second. And I want to talk about the way the governments can respond when you have a monopoly. All right, so there's 4 ways that they can respond. They can try to make the industry more competitive. They can regulate the monopoly. They can turn the monopoly into a public business, a publicly owned business, or they can just choose to do nothing at all. All right, so let's go through each scenario. Right, the first is they could try and make the market more competitive. All right, how can they do this? They can do it through antitrust laws. Now, what do antitrust laws allow? They allow the government to break up monopolies into multiple companies. They allow, the antitrust laws prevent monopolies from forming because the government can say, all right, we think that this market's getting too close to monopoly, so we're not going to allow any more companies to merge together. All right. So two antitrust laws that you just want to be aware of are the Sherman Antitrust Act and the Clayton Act. Now, you don't have to really know anything about them other than just their antitrust laws that prevent monopolies. That's all you have to know. You don't have to know anything about the years or specifically what they do. They're just, you know that they're laws that we use to do this. Okay. Now, another thing that a government can do is they can regulate the monopoly. They can say, all right, we're going to allow this monopoly. Like, so for example, for a natural monopoly, right? They could say, we're going to allow this monopoly to form. Okay. But we're going to regulate what this company can charge. All right. So you can see up on the slide, right? It's talking about maybe the government says, all right, we're going to force this company to produce where MR equals MC. We're going to force this company to produce the socially optimal output. All right, so let's talk about where that would be. Socially optimal is where where marginal cost equals price. Okay, so this would be the socially optimal equilibrium right here at Q2. Okay, so that would be socially optimal, and the monopoly and the government would say, all right, and you must charge right here at P2. Okay, well, there's a problem with this. If you look at Q2, ATC is greater than price. That means that this firm is going to take a loss if they operate at Q2, which means that this firm is going to need a subsidy from the government in order to stay open. And they would need a per unit subsidy equal to this vertical distance right here, equal to this orange vertical distance between price and ATC. Well, the problem with that is, think about this. You have a monopoly here, right, that the government is allowing to form. And then on top of that, the government is giving this monopoly a subsidy. That's probably not going to be a very politically popular thing to do. Okay, so the government could do something else. All right. So what else could they do? Okay, they could go away from this marginal cost pricing and do something else. All right. So let's talk about what else they could do. All right. What they could do instead is they could do what's called fair return pricing. All right. And what is fair return pricing or average cost pricing? That's where the government says, all right, we're going to allow this company to make a accounting profit, but we're not going to allow them to make an economic profit. So where will that happen? It would happen where price equals ATC. So if we go down from price equaling ATC at Q3 here, okay, and then at a price right here of P3. Okay, that would be our fair return. Why is it fair return? Because the firm is making an accounting profit. Remember, accounting profit is always bigger than economic profit. So this company is making zero economic profit because price equals ATC. But they are making accounting profit because accounting profit is always greater than economic profit. So if economic profit is zero, accounting profit must be positive here. It must be positive. Okay. Now, what are the benefits to this? The benefits there are costs and benefits of each one of these different scenarios. Okay. But the benefits of fair return or average cost pricing is that the firm isn't going to need a subsidy here. And all right, and then the price is lower than what it was at profit max price. Okay, so let's go through each one of these three scenarios, right? At price one, profit max price, the firm's able to make a profit and there's no subsidy needed, right? But if you look, the deadweight loss here is very large, right? Because the deadweight loss would be all of this triangle right here. All right, so that's the cost to society. Okay, at marginal cost pricing at P2 right here in orange. Okay, the benefit is that you get the socially optimal quantity. There's zero deadweight loss here, right? But the government is going to have to subsidize this business in order for it to stay open. Okay, so fair return benefits and costs are. Benefit is that the price is lower than marginal cost price, it's lower than profit max pricing, right? And the quantity is greater than the profit max quantity. Okay, so we have a smaller deadweight loss. We still have a deadweight loss, right? But it's a smaller deadweight loss, so we're closer to the socially optimal. Okay, the downside of this is the price is going to be greater than the marginal cost pricing, and there is still a deadweight loss here, right? So there's different costs and benefits of each one of these scenarios, right? But these are different scenarios that the government has in order to regulate. Now, one other thing I want to say about this before we move on, okay, there's lots of different ways that you could be shown price. ATC crossing demand before it crosses marginal cost. For example, I've seen, just to give you another quick little example here, I've seen this shown this way as well. All right, so like you have a downward sloping demand curve and marginal cost curve, just like you always do. Demand, average revenue, and price, and then marginal revenue, and then marginal revenue. Okay, but what I've seen done is stuff like this before. I've seen like the ATC and the marginal cost curves equaling each other, right? So I've seen stuff like this where it's like something like this, okay, where marginal cost equals average total cost. And that throws students off sometimes. But remember, the rule is still the same, okay? ATC crosses demand before it crosses marginal cost, right? So this would still be this is average total cost here. This would still be a natural monopoly. So anytime you see average total cost crossing demand before it crosses marginal cost, I've seen it like this, where like maybe our marginal cost curve looks like this, and then I've seen an average total cost curve do something like this, okay, where it's like almost like an asymptote, and it gets closer and closer to marginal cost. So this is our marginal cost curve right here, and this is our average total cost curve. Again, ATC still crosses demand before it crosses marginal cost. So anytime you see that, right, that's how you know you have a natural monopoly. And all those different scenarios that I just gave you, right, with fair return and marginal cost pricing and all other stuff, right, all that stuff still applies here, okay? So those are different ways that the government can regulate monopolies, right? Another thing that the government could do is they could just take over the monopoly itself and do it themselves. So we see this with electricity. So if you lived in like North Georgia or East Tennessee or parts of North Carolina too, you have what's called the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority. That is a government-owned electricity company, right? Marietta Power and Water is a government-owned electricity company. So the government can take over the natural monopoly, and hopefully if they do that, then the government could just produce at P2 and Q2, right? And you don't need a subsidy because the business is owned by the government itself, all right? Another thing that the government could do is just nothing. They could choose to not do anything at all they could not regulate the monopoly at all. And this happens more often than you think. So think about this. If you ever go out to the middle of nowhere in the United States and there's like one gas station and at the exit and there's not another gas station for like another 60 miles, well, think about it. That gas station is actually a monopoly, right? Because there's no other option for you to buy gas. If you go to a rural town in the United States, it only has one grocery store. That grocery store is a monopoly, right? So there's deadweight losses that are being created by that. The government could step in and they could force another grocery store or another gas station to open, or they could buy that grocery store or that gas station and operate themselves. But basically what the government has decided is that like the deadweight loss and inefficiencies created by the government regulating that much and trying to take over all these businesses is greater than any deadweight loss they would solve by owning it or creating or like forcing competition to open. So basically the government just decides to do nothing because like, there's deadweight losses being created by that gas station in the middle of nowhere or that grocery store in a rural town. But the deadweight losses that are being created there are so small that it's not worth the cost that we're going to have to pay in order for the government to regulate those kinds of businesses. So that's a natural monopoly and how governments can respond to monopolies, right?